Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Horror Within Me. I'm your host, Foxy Batman, and this is a show that's going to be detailing my own personal trauma that I've experienced in my life. So each week, we're going to pick a specific movie, TV show, or anything really that can fall into under the category of being in the horror genre, and we're going to do a quick review of that. We're going to discuss it, and then we're going to relate it to how I perceived it and the types of similarities that I've experienced in my life and how I've coped with that. So if this sounds like the type of show that you're into, welcome. I hope you really enjoy it. We look forward to your feedback and your comments. But if not, no problem. Everyone has their own taste. We're not offended. I'm sure you'll find something that's right for you. All right, well, with that being said, let's dive into my weird, wacky brain and see where we end up. Hi, and welcome back, everybody. This is episode 3 of The Horror Within Me. I am your host, Foxy Batman, and this week's episode is going to be a little different than the previous week. So if you've been tuning in, you're going to realize that some weeks it's just me, and some weeks it's me and a guest. And fortunately, this week I have a very special guest. We're going to call her La Tits, and I'm going to let her take over and say and welcome everyone.
Hello, everyone. I'm Letitz Matthews. Pleasure to be here on The Fear, or The Horror Within Me, actually. Sorry about that. With Foxy Batman. So, let's get this show on the road.
Again, if you've been following me, this is episode 3, and we are going to be using the movie Fear from 1996. Now, technically, it could be considered a psychological thriller more than a horror movie, but it scared the crap out of me as a kid, and I have specific things that I can relate to, so that's going to be our topic of discussion for this episode. So, quick refresh on what the plot was for this movie. The movie stars Reese Witherspoon and Mark Wahlberg, and it follows 16-year-old Nicole Walker, who lives in the suburbs of Seattle with her father Stephen, his new wife Laura, and Laura's son Toby. At a bar where her best friend Margot Mass and friend Gary Romer, Nicole meets David McCall and instantly falls for his good looks and charm. Nicole falls in love with David, but Stephen dislikes him and grows angry with him when he disregards Nicole's curfew and eventually has sex with her. David soon becomes possessive and jealous over Nicole, culminating in attacking Gary when he sees them hugging, beating him up, and giving Nicole a black eye. As a result, she breaks up with him, but they get back together when David manipulates her into believing her father assaults him. I'm not going to continue reading. You can pretty much figure out what type of movie this is and why it would be triggering for maybe not just myself, but anyone who's been in a young relationship where they become manipulated and ultimately abused in some form, whether emotional, physical, or, mental abuse. It's a real thing, and even back in 1996, we're talking, 25 years ago? And it was a strong topic then. It's a strong topic now. There's a lot of movies that follow into it. Think, Enough with Jennifer Lopez. That was a different type of movie, but it was still the same kind of thing.
The young love and manipulation, ultimately, in the end. So, yeah, that goes with it.
Yeah. So, what I remember from watching this movie, I just remember him outside. I remember the end, in the roof. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so.
What do you remember about Fear, this movie?
Well, I primarily remember just how angry and possessive, Mark Wahlberg's character was. Like, he really started off seeming really sweet, but just really the quick turn once, he got her hooked and got in there. And then, no one else could see her or touch her, even with her male friends who already existed even before he got there. So I remember, just the whole, him being at the door, trying to get into the house. That was like, oh, okay. And you're not going to call the police about that one? So.
Yeah. I mean, I think you probably share a lot of the same memories that most people have when they think about this movie. The reception of the movie, it holds a 46 approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Based on 37 reviews, it has an average rating of 5 out of 10. The consensus reads that it has an appealing young cast, but their efforts aren't enough to consistently distract from an increasingly overblown and illogical teen stalker story. I don't agree with that review.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Especially like the over and logical. Yeah, first of all, and I hate to say this as an adult, but teenagers seem illogical anyway in the way they think oftentimes. So I feel like it was realistic to a certain extent.
I don't know why it would say illogical. Who wrote this?
Yes, why illogical? Why illogical? Oh no, that wouldn't happen. Oddly enough, it has.
Let's see if this review from the San Francisco Chronicle is any better. It says, fear is hard to resist, or on one hand, it's a shameless thriller that makes up for the inevitability of its story by consistently being bigger, faster, and more appalling than you might expect. On the other hand, it contains enough truth about fathers, teenage daughters, and young lust to distinguish it from most thrillers and ground it in vivid emotion. It is a nightmare fantasy for fathers. Okay, that's much more, I think, what we can think about, because I don't remember much of the father, but I know it was really relevant to the story.
Right.
Who was the?
I think it was
William Peterson.
Yes, William Peterson.
Yes.
My guy from CSI.
Yeah. I didn't even realize that was him until just now.
Yeah.
Because like I said, everyone, even Reese Witherspoon and Mark Wahlberg, think about things that they are in now. What is that?
Both growth of character and within their craft. Like when you think about it, they've both grown. Because this was probably his second or third movie of his career at that point in time.
I'm gonna look this. We're gonna figure out exactly what movie this was for him. It looks like it was his first starring role. So yeah, Mark Wahlberg came in looking like a straight stalker and still survived Hollywood because what do you know? Right. I'm not going to talk about the men in Hollywood. That's a different episode. But the movie was just, more reviews. We're going to look up more reviews and tell you what other people thought about it. But I know for me, I remember my sisters who were teenagers during that time having, boyfriends and having a reaction to that kind of movie. And it was...
What were their reactions like?
What I remember, I kind of remember everyone still liking Mark Wahlberg, and I'm not sure, I'm 35 now, and I'm maybe somebody should have had a conversation with them as well.
You know what? I feel like that happened with most girls at that point in time and age group, because he was, a heartthrob. Okay, so let's go with his history, and I know this is getting away from the, the horror genre, but he was, a rapper / entertainer or whatever, Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch.
Yeah, Marky Mark.
So, this was a transition from that into becoming a Calvin Klein underwear model, and so this was his first take on acting. So he was a teen heartthrob, for lack of better term. So naturally, it didn't matter what he was doing at that point in time, the girls loved it, which again is, I feel like, what really ties into the horror of this film, because it's something that is relatable. Myself being young and impressionable, he was older than, Reese's character in this. He wasn't in high school. She was in high school. He was basically an adult. So there was that attraction to an older individual. So that's how...
Yeah, I think that was more common to be accepted back in the day, too.
Right.
And I do say back in the day because it was 1996. And today's youth we're ancient. They don't know what this is. Anyone out there that's going to listen to this episode, going to skip right past it, Fear. Fear Street? That's a different episode, too. When I do Fear Street, I'll make sure that I put it on the TikToker. No. This is definitely... So basically, it looks like at the end of the movie, Stephen throws David through the bedroom window where he falls to his death. The family embraces each other as the police and paramedics arrive. That's just, we're skipping the entire movie. We're going to talk about how they met and how he died.
Yeah.
So that
there's no filler in between.
Yeah, think about, this is a perfect gateway to enter into other, like I said, other movies. Think of Enough. It's very similar. Fatal Attraction is similar. She was crazy. These people having affairs. Even like Beyonce and Ally Lauder and Obsessed.
You know what?
You know,
Please don't.
these crazed things that these people go through. Or even the true crime documentaries that are out there, which is again another show.
Snapped.
But yeah, Snapped,
Snapped.
or Fatal Attractions. Like these are real things that happen to people. So the fact that I think it's kind of funny that the reviews are not as great. But I'm looking at the time, like the dates, and I have one here that's from 2020. This is a person named Brandon who wrote, "It's not great. An interesting way to spend an hour and a half, that's for sure. The performances were fine, but it was so twisted." Okay, Brandon, from Medium Popcorn, rating this movie in 2020, I will need to know when you were born. Because I think you need to have experienced it in its element when it was due, unless you are a diehard fan and you can look back and watch old cinematic movies. And I know it's a shame to call it old, but we're looking at 25 years here. But do you think that him being a teen heartthrob was a reason he was cast? Like, do you think that maybe that was a mistake for young women in that time that might have confused them, since he was such this prominent sexual figure, for lack of better terms?
You know what? That's actually a really good question. And it's something I never actually really thought about. Now, definitely, I think he was cast because of who he was and his appearance, you know, and his history within, you know, that generation, so to speak. You know what I mean? Because, let's see, 96. So I was about 13, 14 years old. So there were a lot of us around that, you know, that grew up liking him and, you know, the other musical influences of that time. So that was definitely appropriate to cast him in that role.
Instead of being a hero, though, he was a villain in that role. So, like you said, you were 13, 14, and I don't know if you were a Marky Mark fan, you know, but, I mean, think about it. If you were, how did it impact the way that you viewed him? Did it impact the way that you viewed other people that you found attractive? Did you think that if they were attractive, they might turn out and behave and be possessive like him? Did you think that it would be normalized to have that kind of relationship? I know I just threw a lot of things at you, so I'm gonna let you go ahead and answer whatever one
you
first.
Really did. So let me digest this a little bit, break it down, because those are all really good questions. Because when you think about it, that age group, that time period within my life and other young girls' lives, that can definitely affect how we have relationships moving forward. So if we're seeing this great heartthrob, this, you know, our big crush as, you know, a girl, and oh, here he is in a movie, which again, incidentally, I think perhaps he wasn't necessarily typecast, but he might have wanted that role as a way to break up the image of what he already was. You know, he wanted to be taken seriously, because that happens a lot in Hollywood.
It was a serious role.
You know what I mean? A lot of people do that. No, I want to do something different because I want to be taken seriously in this industry. So that could be, you know, his personal choice, why he chose to premiere his role in that role.
I guess what I think I'm wondering is the movie made to educate young women on the dangers of this, or was it more of a cash out, you know?
Honestly, I think it was more fantastical, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like they didn't think about things like that at that time period. Like we really, there wasn't a lot of education. They utilized after school specials to educate us on things like that, not necessarily
and
big movies, big cinema.
Him being, you know, like you said, this person, and then everyone's like, I wish that he would, you know, love me this way, and it's only me or no one else, and she's just not, you know, respecting that.
And you know what? That could have been what led to a lot of the generational issues that came. You know what I mean? Yeah. For example, right now, I feel like a lot of the boomers, the baby boomers, generationally, the women and their mindset now is based on what happened within their generation. What I mean by that is you have a lot of women who are in, you know, their late 50s, early 60s. They settle for men because they feel like, oh, well, I'm not going to have another opportunity to get anybody else. So this person is seemingly interested in me.
Yeah.
then, you know, no matter what else he comes with, I'm going to go with that because I can't do any better.
And you're not supposed to want any better. If someone
Right.
picks you, you stick it out to the death do us
Right.
part thing.
That's, you know, that's a generation thing. So unfortunately, this could be, you know, a part of what shaped things for my generation, where, you know, you have the kids that came afterwards who, you know, got increasingly worse with the whole pick me generation, where like, oh no, we got to go with this. And then, you know, it's swinging back around where, you know, you have, you know, females are like, no, forget that. I don't have to be bothered with anything.
I think also it matters when you see it. Like for instance, this
Right.
movie, I was 10 years old when this movie came out.
Right. Which is
And
another
I-
reason why you were probably so scared.
And I did see it when I was 10.
Right.
You know, some people don't experience movies like you don't know when that one review I read from 2020, if that was his first time seeing that movie. Like that's what I mean. The age that you experience.
Yeah.
Like, did you experience this movie in 1996 when it came out? Were you able to watch it then, or was this something that you saw later on in life?
I think I saw it in 97 because I do remember seeing it like on HBO.
HBO.
I saw it on HBO.
HBO has always been around,
And
kids.
typically HBO movies, like when it came on, like especially if it premiered on HBO.
HBO
it
had a
started
15-minute
Intro.
introduction. Yes. They need to do it again.
With the lights and the
Yes. Oh, you knew you were about to be in for something.
Yes. No matter what it was just the, you know, the high cinema.
As I was saying, Channel 18.
But I think, yeah, definitely it could be definitely viewed as something else depending on the age. And also depending on what your home life is like.
That is also true.
Because for me, I didn't take it as, oh wow, that would be great if somebody loved me like that.
That's
But
that's
also,
true. That's
you
a
know
true
what I mean?
point.
But I also didn't take it like, okay, well that's unrealistic. That could never ever happen. I didn't really think about it that way. Honestly, and I'm going to be perfectly honest. For me, when I saw this, I said, only white people.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, honestly, I said, that would not necessarily happen that way, you know, in a different neighborhood.
Well, I mean, actually, if you think about it, you know, just to segue just a moment, it's not a horror movie, but it's kind of similar. If you think of Tina Turner's situation,
Right.
it was similar.
Right.
If I can't have you, no one can, and he was abusive.
Right.
And they were African American.
Yeah.
I'm just poking a hole in
But
it.
you, know, I mean, you can try, but again,
But
was
that
also
just goes back
industry.
to cinema. Exactly.
Right.
It goes back to cinema and who was making the money, because they weren't telling the stories through African Americans. They were
No.
telling the stories through Caucasians. But again,
Right.
that's another episode for
Right.
another day.
Because again, but you're right. That's why I didn't find it so terribly far off base as something that couldn't actually
But you,
happen.
as an African American woman, thought it was only white people because they weren't
I didn't
portraying
relate
you.
to it that way. Exactly.
They weren't showing you.
Exactly. And then I was
So that's a good point. You know, seeing that movie from your standpoint is a good example of how two different races experience horror films.
right, the same scenario that could happen in either. It just wouldn't be received the same way.
Exactly,
Or even
yeah.
reported the same way.
Yes.
But even down to, you know, because her friend was Alyssa Milano in this. And
Yeah, I was just gonna say I don't remember her being in this. I
do.
love Alyssa from Charmed, and that is definitely, you know, folks, stay tuned. That's
love
one
it.
of these episodes.
You know what? And I guess I'm gonna age myself here a little bit. I remember her all the way back from Who's the Boss.
Yeah, I do remember Who's the Boss, but I do like Alyssa
playing
Milano.
Tony Danza's daughter. But yeah, I definitely preferred her in Charmed. Like that was
Phoebe.
the show for her. Phoebe on Charmed. That was it.
With Arrested Hallowell. Yes. But speaking of Phoebe and Charmed and Alyssa Milano, I mean, think about the relationship that her character had on Charmed with Cole. You know, and that was a very, you know, he was the source of all evil, and she thought he was this, you know, what was his name? He was the demon, the red demon with the black on his face. Balthazar, yes.
Didn't think I could pull that one out, did you?
Never second guess you for a second, Latits. Never. You guys, there's going to be a second podcast. It's going to be called Ask Latits, and she will give you 100% accurate information in all aspects and all genres of anything at all. The universe. But I do want to get a little bit more into the personal relations to these kinds of relationships that we've seen in the horror genre or in media, like the thriller medias, like the possessive, manipulative boyfriends with these young, impressionable people. Now, for me personally, as a gay man, I only viewed heterosexual encounters like that. I didn't see two guys have these issues, or even two women have these issues.
Growing up.
Yeah, growing up. But that doesn't change the fact that I was in a similar situation with my first boyfriend I met when I was 19. How about you? How were you when you had your first real, experience with...
Well, since you asked, I actually that's so cute that you met your first real boyfriend at 19. I was already married over a year by the time I was 19, but I met my ex-husband when I was 16 years old. Actually, I had first met him when I was 13, just kind of around in the neighborhood, but I started dealing with him once I became 16. But he was significantly older than me.
Kind of like our characters in Fear.
Yes.
I mean, you were 16.
Right.
I don't know the age difference, and that's fine. But an older man and a young woman, it's kind of what we've already
seen.
Yeah.
we've seen it.
Yeah.
But what do they say? Art imitates life.
Well, exactly, yes.
So, that was the truth of it all. But yeah, for me...
Was he like Mark Wahlberg kind of character? Like charming? And what was it that made you... What was attractive that attracted you to the relationship?
Honestly, I think just... Number one, I've always been attracted to people who are older because I've always been older mentally.
You got a Hugh Hefner complex.
No, I didn't say grandpa. But I mean, it might as well have been considering how it ended up being. But so for me,
is he on Medicare now?
He should be.
No,
I don't think he is. But no, so for me, I think what attracted number one was the older, but I didn't know how much older. But it was definitely started off nice and charming and sweet, but the other side of my family knew he was older, so they were like, yeah, no, I don't want you around
Who
her.
pursued who?
Oh, he pursued me.
Okay.
He pursued me, and he actually had started even before I had. Honestly, I only responded to him when I finally did because I was bored.
Well, you're a 16-year-old girl.
Right, I was bored, and I really shouldn't have been as bored as I was, but I was. I was bored, and he seemed charming, but that's those manipulative ones are.
Yeah, because it's not like it's the word pursue and predator. I mean, to an extent.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. Even when you're pursuing somebody, typically you're trying to set a trap to get them to, at least to get them to where you can get enough of their attention.
Yes.
And that's definitely one of the things about it. So, being a 16-year-old girl, being pursued by someone older, because, it's not like guys in my age group were really, quote-unquote, pursuing girls. They just,
I think I think it's just human. Especially, I don't know about you, but for me, when my ex also pursued me, I had no interest in him.
Right.
At all.
At all.
I was interested in everyone but him.
Right.
But I think being young, and also, I don't know about you, but I was growing up as a gay man, and I didn't have those kind of attractions and interactions with other people, so I didn't know my worth. So when someone was interested in me, it was exciting.
Right. It's like, ooh, I haven't experienced this before.
Yes.
Especially not to this level.
Yeah. And they start doing things that gain your interest and intrigued and...
Well, because the thing about it is, especially when, speaking on the whole predatory aspect of it, they know, their prey. They know, okay, this individual hasn't experienced this before. I'm going to do this.
Yes.
I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that. It's kind of like, with a narcissist, where they love bomb you. Do you know what love bombing is?
No, why don't you enlighten us and enlighten us listeners here.
Okay, so love bombing is where they, shower you with all kinds of affection and just an interest and tell me about you. I want to know all about you. I want to be everywhere you are. I want to go wherever you go. I want to be with you all the time. Just
Oh yeah, well that's
really,
exactly what.
right at the beginning.
It's at the beginning, but then once they get you, it's not a. It's a very short-lived period.
But that's why it's called love bombing, because it's like boom, 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 boom. I'm gonna hit you with all this right now, with really quick succession, and catch you off guard, sweep you off your feet, and then I'm gonna pull all of that back.
How long were you with your ex-husband?
Too long.
I mean, aren't we all?
I mean, I would say 12 years.
Okay, so
Yeah, 12
that's
years.
a significant chunk of your life.
Yes.
I was also with my ex for 10 years.
Yeah.
We
were married for 10, but I was with him for 12.
Yeah, I was only married for a year and a half, if not even a year, a little over a year, but together for 10. But you know, this is a long time, so this is what I think that's interesting with the movie Fear and like the 16-year-old, because like you were 16 and then you were 26 when this ended, and that's a whole different person. You're a grown adult. Same thing, like I was 19 and then I was 29, and it was my first boyfriend, my first relationship. Wow. I've had other experiences with people, you know, but
you know.
I had never experienced relationships,
right?
And I look back on it a lot because there's a lot of reference points that you don't want to fall into again.
Right.
A lot of things that we've experienced that I want to talk a little more into throughout those 10 years, 12 years, that you may have not paid attention to during that time or have and made excuses for that you would never do again. Do you know what I mean?
I do. Because you're right. You're definitely a different person because you're supposed to be when you think about it.
You're a different person, but you're also stunted. Like you come out
when you're dealing with someone who's manipulative and doing things like that.
Yes.
You're definitely not. You haven't gotten a chance to grow.
Your balance is off because you're physically okay. So physically, you were a 26-year-old woman, and you've accomplished things in your adult life as a 26-year-old woman. But when you ended that relationship, you were leaving a relationship as a 16-year-old girl.
Right. Technically, yes.
Like that's and you don't know.
Which was I think supposed to be the point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's. You know, you question all that. You're like, why would somebody be interested in someone who was that much younger than him? And, you know, it ultimately ended once, you know, the light went on for me. You know, and
what year would you say the light went on for you? But even more importantly, what year do you think that you started to notice things that you didn't want to notice and pushed away? Did you do that?
I did. Honestly, I think I did that from the beginning. Like when I think about it, for example, let's see, when we were supposed to get married. Now, first of all, I
need to know this story. Tell me about the marriage proposal.
Okay, so
like, was it?
There wasn't a proposal. There was literally a conversation, and it wasn't even with me.
Okay, so you were instructed that you guys were going to be married.
I mean, yes, honestly, I was told, hey. Call our pastor. We're getting married next Tuesday.
Yeah, so it was kind of like a...
Well, that was the second part. Let me go back.
Yeah.
Because the first time we were supposed to get married, because, let me see, we ended up getting married in February, but we were supposed to get married, and we're setting a date for the November just before that. Okay. And again, even with the marriage, he didn't have a conversation with me. He went to my pastor and told him that we were dealing with each other and that he wanted to marry me.
Okay.
So it was never a matter of
you didn't really have much of a choice.
It's you know
like you had a choice, but when you look at it in the wording that's used, it's very commanding and it's very anything. Think about like I'm not trying to use a weird analogy, but like your parent-child relationships. Right. Like grab your coat, we're going to the grocery store.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
right. And because me being a silly child, not knowing okay. Like
no, I get it because even though like I didn't get married till I was 27. I don't remember the conversation. Mm-hmm. There wasn't a proposal. We were been together for a while. We discussed it. I think we were drinking one night and had discussed it, and it was one of those rare moments where we seemed happy again in our relationship,
right.
And so we've decided to like get married. But like, and I remember the course of the next few days or whatever the case is, I remember asking, "Do you really want to do this?" Because, like, I mean, I do if you do. Right. It was kind of, like, weird. But
see, I never even had that. I didn't even have that, hey, are you sure you want to do this? It wasn't even that type of thing. But I feel like I didn't even get a chance to do that. and I know this sounds crazy. First of all, don't we sound weird? Especially when you listen to me, you're like, wait, what do you mean he never asked you? Well, first of all, again, I was a child when we first entered into a relationship.
I don't think...
And that's what I look at it as.
Yeah, I don't think we sound as weird as we think, because that's the point, this is for other people out there that have experienced this. I know people that have gone through things worse than us, or not as worse that we've gone through, but I mean, just being able to talk about it and share our experiences, I think, could be helpful, because
we might find some other people who've encountered
there are people still dealing with this.
It's true.
Being in these relationships, like I said, I wasn't in a physically abusive relationship, although there were a select few physical encounters.
Right.
But I was I was in a relationship where I was being mentally manipulated and emotionally abused, not realizing I was in a relationship where I was being mentally manipulated and emotionally abused.
Right.
That is what I still am having trouble unwrapping.
Right. Because now that you have grown, you're wondering, how did I allow that?
Yeah.
And for so long. Like, how did I miss that? But again, you asked me about red flags.
Yeah.
And it's like, I saw them. There were certain things, just the selfishness. He was a very selfish individual.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really what started it, because, again, remember I said we were supposed to get married in November? I called it off because I was like, I'm not doing this. Like, you were supposed to pick me up from work, and you didn't. I ended up having to call somebody else to pick me up from work. Like, you didn't even check to make sure that I was okay. And I'm not one of those, like, dependent people.
No, but your significant other is supposed to be the one person in the entire world that shows up for you, and literally he didn't show up for you.
Right.
But also, I used to have that. I mean, my ex used to pick me up all the time from my job, but then, like, when you move in and things like that change, he stopped taking me to work. I used to have to get rides. It was not weird to me.
I had that same, that's what I'm saying. And this was after I was married.
Yeah.
Like, he had a vehicle, but it's like, why can't you take me to work? Or why can't I...
I was made to feel bad for asking for inconveniencing his time.
Yes.
Yes. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'll find a ride.
Right. Like, I'll never forget that. I think that was, I think, a beginning. You know what? No, I take that back, because there were other instances. I know, for me, having gotten married so young, because I got married when I turned 18.
So you originally stopped. You said no.
Right.
How did that conversation resurface that you ended up going through? Was it a quick process where you were like,
Yeah, no.
I'm sorry, I take it back? Or?
No. It was just nah, I'm not doing that.
Okay.
And that was just it. But life went on. It wasn't even necessarily a thing. It just was like, okay. Yeah. Who knows? He might have even felt some relief at that point in time, because he basically, again, initiated the whole thing. I didn't. I never did. So, I think for me, that was a big part of that. Like, okay, well, no. And then the next thing was, a couple months later, all right, call Pastor, tell him we need him on Tuesday because we're getting married.
So he kind of put you in a corner, and so you couldn't really have enough time to react and actually make an informed decision.
Right.
It was an ultimatum, basically, because you're loving this man. You love this man. And you know that if you try to back out, that could be the end of this, correct? Like, it could be over. So he gave you a short period of time.
I don't even know if I thought about that.
Maybe subconsciously. Like, it's just because you went through with it.
Yeah, I think for me, because again, I married so young, I think there
before
were
the
some
marriage,
issues within that.
Before the marriage, were there any of these red flags that, the abuse mentally or physically or whatever you endured, were there things that happened before the marriage?
Yeah, there were a couple things.
Okay.
I'm trying to think, because it wasn't the manipulation wasn't as apparent.
Okay.
To me, it is now in hindsight.
So how long have you been out of this situation?
Oh gosh, double-digit years.
So it's been some time that you've been able to digest.
Really, yes.
Yeah, because I've been out of mine for 6 years.
Right.
Yeah. Because I think that's important
too. It doesn't even seem like that long, but
no.
That's, it flew by.
It does. And I was stunted all around. You met me at the end of my relationship.
Right.
And the beginning of who I am today. and they're not the same person.
No.
And I'm sure you're
They
not
don't
the
even
same
look the
person.
same.
Yeah. But I mean, like, that's just when you look at it, and I think about these people in these situations that are still living it, and I'm trying to pinpoint specific things, like you said, the selfishness or the passive aggressiveness.
Right.
Because I had a lot of passive aggressiveness, a lot of turning the tables on me, like
Right.
projection.
Again, the gaslighting.
Yes, gaslighting.
The gaslighting.
I never in my. I mean, and it still affects me to this day.
Right.
And I'm sure you have after effects. I don't know if they'll ever go away.
I mean, I think once we're done dealing with them, they will. But it's a matter of trying not to project onto other people. Because everyone that may say something similar may not be for the same result.
Yeah, and I think also,
do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, I know you said this, but
I want to.
You know, whenever I'd hear this before with him, it would.
Yeah, I mean, I've had triggers.
This.
Yes. And I think that, even going back to the beginning of what we discussed earlier with the movie, and like you had pointed out, I think you said something along the lines of your upbringing on how you interpret the movie.
Right.
But I think that's the same thing with these relationships, because if you've listened to my episodes, my home life was not great. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I didn't have happy times and I didn't love my family, but it was very dysfunctional.
Right.
And it
that's
is,
what
and
shapes.
I'm trying very hard to be comfortable in saying that. This doesn't take away how I miss my parents or how much I love my family, but to really own it, I have to own the environment that I was raised in.
Right.
And I do remember specific things, like when I met my ex, I remember, like you said, the interest that they had in me. My older siblings had significant others. They had children at this time. And I was this newly out gay kid, and I didn't know if I would ever have what other people had.
Right.
And I kind of latched on, I guess, to what
you felt was secure.
Yes.
And was along the lines of what you thought
Yeah.
you wanted for yourself.
Yes. And it's sad because I'm sure now, even now, like a light bulb's going off in my head, is that he probably knew that.
Yes. And that's why I say predator.
Yeah.
Because I know for a fact that my ex-husband knew how my home life was.
Yeah.
He knew that I was looking for security.
Mm-hmm.
So it was easy to do that. It's like, oh no, and it's just like you said, what things did you see beforehand? Well, I didn't notice that that's what it was until after the fact. But he did a lot to isolate me from my family.
Isolation was big.
Like, he did a lot to isolate me from my family. Just, certain things he would say, oh, well, they're jealous of you because of X, Y, and Z. And it's like, it literally, once I remove myself from the situation, it's like, why would anybody have been jealous of that? And why did I think, why did I go with that?
It's so hard to not feel stupid. I don't like the word stupid. I don't like the word dumb. I don't think it's fair to project that
ignorant.
word.
We'll say ignorant.
Especially on women. I think we really all as a society need to stop using that as a term when people are in these situations that we don't understand why they are still in these situations.
Right.
Calling a woman or a man dumb for sticking in a situation is contributing to their self-esteem and their negativity
and their codependence.
Yes.
That develops as a result.
Because let's say, if I knew you then and say I was, judgmental and I call you stupid for being in this situation, your person at the time is going to know about this because they know everything. Right. Because even though they're not giving you the information that you want, you're still feeding them with everything.
Right.
You're seeking attention. So you're like, so and so called me stupid. And they're like, see, babe, this is why you only have me. You don't have real friends. You don't have real family.
Right.
I don't think it's healthy to use that word dumb or stupid in these situations.
Right. Because again, you never know why. You never know what the underlying factors are.
There's a lot, and like you said, the underlying factors, because I felt stupid. I felt dumb because that's what I was told dumb people do.
Right.
Dumb people fall for this.
Right.
Right. Like, but I'm not dumb. Right. And I wasn't dumb. They're just good at their manipulation.
We were being manipulated by people who, this is what they do.
Literally.
It had worked. It's not even like we were the first people that they had done it to.
No,
when you
and they
think
do it
about
to
it.
everyone
They
in
do it to
their
everyone
life.
in their exactly, because they're
On
that's
different
what a
levels.
narcissist-
On different
Right.
levels in different parts of their relationship. Their coworkers, their families, their significant others,
Anybody
their
they come in
peers.
contact with.
Yeah, they have this facade, this image of who they are, but then when you're by yourself, it's different. And I just think about all the times of how worthless I felt for years.
For years.
I don't even know why I stayed around.
Right.
And that's what I mean. Like,
it didn't make sense. Like, looking back on it now, it's like, well, why didn't you just get up and leave? And it's like,
because I was still that 19-year-old.
right.
I think that's what it comes down to. Even though I'm not saying that 19-year-olds, are any. It is what it is. They're teenagers.
But that's
they're
where
not
you were
adults
mentally at that point in time.
Yeah.
And you, again, it's like you said, you were stunned, so we stayed there. We didn't know we were still staying there. We didn't know we were still living in that mind frame.
Yeah.
We didn't know that.
And then we become contributors to the manipulation and the
Right.
relationship, because that's what happens. Like, I have things that I would be at fault for because of learned behavior, and I think that's a part of being in a situation for years. That's what people don't realize. This isn't a few months. These are years of every day.
You become conditioned.
That's the word for it.
You become conditioned.
This is why you're here, Letitz. Listen, she's our psychologist. She's our friend and our confidant. Her name is Letitz. What's your last name? Matthews. But yes, conditioned to how they want, but then defiant against them. So now we start trying to. I don't know about you, but I tried to do like.
You try to rebel.
I tried to replicate behavior.
Okay.
So, and I always would get caught because I was not okay.
What were you doing?
So, the one of the red flags that I didn't pay attention to, I paid too much attention to, but I didn't do anything about, was the secrecy of my ex. I couldn't touch his phone. I couldn't ask him questions. I couldn't know anything about anything that he was doing. Mm-hmm. And it just drove me crazy. So I would try to catch him in lies. Like, so even though I didn't know anything about him, he knew everything about me.
Right.
He had my locations. He had my passwords. I would try to change the password so he couldn't get in, and he would watch and somehow figure it out and then show me, just to prove a point. Like, I can always get into whatever you're into, but you can never get into mine.
Wow.
And I remember one time I tried tracking his location because I just had this feeling that he was doing something, and with somebody else, and he got a notification that I was tracking him. I mean, and I got called out. He texted me. He was like, "You're trying to track my location?" And I'm like, "Well, fuck!" Like, it was always like I was.
I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you meddling kids.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I just always, my whole life was under his microscope, and his entire life was a locked door.
Right.
I don't know how I lived that way for so long.
Right. Again, it's the conditioning, because it's like, okay, well, if I dig too deep and if I ask too many questions, then he'll leave.
I started asking questions. He didn't leave. He just didn't speak.
But he didn't answer them.
Yeah, that was the thing too. Like, I didn't have adult communication. Did you have adult communications?
The silent treatment is still a form of manipulation.
It is. Because they know what it's doing to you.
Right, because they know it's punishment. If you actually care,
it is
they know
punished.
It's punishment.
Yes.
It's punishment. Okay, you know what? You asked me something and you know you're not supposed to be asking me any questions. I'm not giving you any information anyway. Tell you what, I'm just going to completely shut down. I'm going to shut you out.
Yeah, I would not be able to sleep because I would be trying to get information, and then I would feel like such a piece of shit because I would not know what was going in his brain, and I wanted to know what was happening, if our relationship was ending. Like, I was fighting for a love that they knew I was fighting for, so they were like, I'm going to withhold it because it's kind of funny.
Right.
It's just
right.
It's sad.
Right.
It's a sad situation.
And I think for me, though, he just didn't care. So it wasn't a matter of, let me just give the silent treatment. It just, I don't think it ever even really came to that. It was more so me that wouldn't speak, but it didn't bother him.
No, when you try to show them that you are upset or something and hope for a reaction out of them, they didn't care.
No. Just, it literally was not.
One of those toddler things I would do, I would slam a door.
Right.
Open a cabinet aggressively.
Right.
You know, like, just try to get a reaction out of them, and they'll just... You know what my ex did? He would laugh at me.
Yes.
So degrading.
Right.
Laugh at me.
Right.
And
basically calling you stupid. Like,
he would call me crazy all the time. You're crazy. To the point where, I don't know if your ex was as good as this one, but not just having me feel I was crazy, having the people in my life on his side. I would have my own family and friends telling me, you need to stop. You know, you're really pushing him away. Look how you're reacting. Look at how you are. Mm. I had not just my person telling me this. I had my everyone.
Because that's how masterful he was.
Yeah.
I don't think he couldn't do that with my family because they really didn't care for him.
Yeah.
Because they didn't agree with the relationship in general. They had gotten used to it, that many years out. And I had been so kind of isolated that they really weren't in it anyway.
Yeah.
So they weren't someone who he could say something to about me.
Or that he needed to.
Right.
Because my family was in the house with us.
Right. So he had access to them.
Yes.
So that's why he really had to have his game.
Yeah. Yours was in a different aspect where he isolated you from people.
Right.
I could do what I want.
Right.
In my mind where I was going out and I had friends, but he was the victim.
Right.
I was the aggressor.
You're going out.
I was the aggressor.
It's you.
Yeah.
You are doing all of this.
Yeah, and then so your ex was more of, I'm all you have.
Right. And it's not even like that's something he would say because the groundwork had been laid so much earlier on.
Yeah.
To where I was suspicious of those other people.
Yes.
Suspicious of family. So I didn't lean on them or depend on them or confide in them.
Yeah.
Because it's like, that underlying thought in the back of my head that I was told, oh, well, they're not really good for you. They're not really for you.
Yeah. So when did I know for me, I think I have a pretty good idea, so I'm going to talk about how we got out of it.
Okay.
When you really realized that you had to make a change, that this person was no longer what you needed or wanted for yourself. I know for me, it was a major life event that I had experienced with him that kind of forced separation and opened eyes into a life that I was unaware of that he was living.
Right.
It was extreme, but even after that, I still didn't know how to live without him. He's all I knew. He was my experience.
Again, it's conditioning.
Yeah. So I didn't even, at that point, I knew to an extent what I was being told, but I still had an image of who I wanted him to be.
Right.
And who I was always wanting him to be. And that's what I finally realized.
That's what you had always held on to.
He was never the person
that you thought.
That I was holding on to. Even, so I think it changed. We were together for 10 years, and I think the real change in the relationship came after the third year we were together. I stayed with this man for like 8 years. 7 years. Unhappy.
Way longer than you should have.
Yeah.
Because again, you had already been conditioned. And so then after that point, I know for me, another reason why I stayed as long as I did is because I got married young. Yeah. There was opposition in me getting married. So I felt like a part of the reason why I stayed that long was also, I guess you could say, kind of to prove a point.
Yeah. Because
oftentimes, especially since I was so young, I would hear all the time, even from people in my age group, oh, you got married young. Okay, well, that ain't going to last because you're going to be out there buck wild. And I'm like, well, no, I never cared about being out in the streets.
No.
So that's not a thing for me. I don't feel like I'm missing something. So that's not what's going to tear me apart from
No, it wasn't that. I know.
It wasn't that. But for me, things began to unfold like over the course of a year.
Okay.
It really, and I mean, there were things even within it because it's like you said, you really weren't happy. And I remember feeling like this person really couldn't care less about me.
A lot. Like, I felt that way a lot.
Yes, there were so many instances
I have
where I was like, wow.
a specific instance. My father died of a heart attack. We lived with him, me and my ex. Lived with him, my sister, her 3 kids, or her 2 kids and her boyfriend. And my dad died of a heart attack. I didn't obviously take it very well. I was 23. And I remember it wasn't long after he died, but I didn't handle it well. Mm-hmm. My father's passing. I began drinking very heavily. And I was in the process of trying to get into college. And I'd quit my job because my dad said he would help me financially, and then he died. And so I dropped out of college. It was only like 1 semester I got to go. But I remember coming home after, being crazy or whatever, and his laptop was on the bed, open, and it was an opportunity. Because like I said, I didn't have those opportunities with him. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't even a moment.
Caught him slipping that one time.
Yeah, but I didn't, even in the moment, it didn't feel like I caught him slipping. I didn't feel like I was looking, really, the way I had in the past where I was fighting for something. It was just something that was there, so I just, moved the trackpad. And Facebook was open. And I was like, this is interesting. You know what I mean? I wasn't angry. We weren't fighting. I wasn't snooping, but it was there, so I was curious. And I found him send a message to his ex saying, I miss you. Can I see you? And so I confronted him, and he told me that he went to go see him, but that nothing was there, so he decided to come back. This was during the time that I just lost my father, and I'm grieving heavily, and instead of him being there for me, he didn't want to handle me and my worst, so he reached out to an ex and to see if something was still there. So something was still there, he was just going to leave me.
Right.
Yeah. So things like that really impact you, and I don't even know how I stayed with him after that.
Right. It makes you wonder.
Yeah.
It literally makes you wonder. So similarly for me, that was the start of it. My brother died. And it was, from my mother, it was just me and my brother. So it was just the 3 of us for longer than I can remember. Even, when my stepfather had passed away, him and my mother had been separated for probably a couple years before that. So it had been a minute. But I lost my brother suddenly. And I found that, in my opinion, I didn't handle it very well, because for me, I just kind of shut down. And for the one who typically seems to be the strong individual, that was something that wasn't normal for me. Like, I knew, okay, I don't think I'm really handling this well. I couldn't talk about my brother. Like, literally, whenever I would mention something or mention him, he would change the subject.
Yeah, because he didn't want to be uncomfortable. He didn't want to see you uncomfortable, and he wanted to push it aside because he couldn't handle that situation for you.
So, but what was weird was that I went to claim my brother's effects when he died. So I brought home the bag of all of his clothes and everything that was at the hospital. I went back to the bag one day, and my brother's sneakers and hoodie were not in the bag. So I happened to call him. I was like, hey, have you seen Skeet's things? Like, his sneakers aren't here. Oh, yeah, I got them. I said, why do you have his sneakers? He goes, well, I mean, it's not like he was going to use them.
Oh.
That's what he said to me. I didn't even have any words. I literally hung up.
Because what do you say in that situation?
What can you say?
My ex told me once during a fight that he hopes I get cancer and die like my mom.
Yeah.
And I had no words.
Right.
And these are so as terrible as all of that was, the best thing that ever happened to me was getting out of that.
Right.
And I feel the same for you. And the people we are today, and that's the whole message of this show is there's a lot of traumas and horrors that people experience, and obviously we have a fun light side. We talk about different horror medias because I am a horror fanatic. I love talking about all things horror. Yeah. But unfortunately there's a lot of similarities to experiences within the horror genre and my actual life.
Right.
And I know there's a lot of people out there that I think for this topic is very, there are people that you can reach out to. there is a different side of life.
Right.
I'm much happier. I've met someone. I'm married again. I'm very happy, but not saying that I need to be with someone to be happy.
Right.
Before met my now husband, I began working on myself and who I am, and I'm soon to be graduating from college. I've worked very hard. I had my own place. A lot of life goals that I've hit that I never would have hit if I would have stayed in this stunted relationship.
Exactly.
And
because that's the growth that the narcissist
Yes.
didn't want you to experience.
Yes.
Because then you would have realized that, okay, well, there is actually the possibility of life outside of you.
yes, and learning the real meaning of real relationships, because for a sentimental moment like you and me have built a very strong relationship and a very strong bond
Right.
outside of the horrors that we've experienced.
Exactly.
And have been there for each other. I have a select few people that I can consider really true family and friends, and I think there was a lot of people in my life during that time that I thought were that were not there for the right reasons. And I think that that's another part of it. It's not just your significant other. It's all these people in your life that are toxic.
Right.
All these people in your life that may be manipulating you or holding you back. You have to be able to evaluate that, but you have to be able to be okay with letting people go.
Right.
Your life does not stop when other people stop being in it.
Exactly.
And I think that's really what people need to get to. And if you're out there and you're listening and you like us and you want to talk, please drop a comment. We find us. I'm on Facebook, The Horror Within Me. Send a message if you just want to talk. There's a lot of outlets. Google them.
Right.
There's a lot of people that have been in these situations. There's support groups everywhere, and I think everyone knows that. But sometimes people just need to hear it.
They need that confirmation.
They need the confirmation. I mean, look at you. You're doing amazing in your life, and
It's just amazing.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if we would be the people we are today if we were still with the people we were with.
I don't believe so. Because the people that we were with didn't want us to become the people that we are.
Because the people that we are the people that we always wanted to be.
Right. Even if we didn't know that that's who we wanted to be.
Yeah. I knew that I wanted not that.
Right.
You know, like...
But I think that a part about it also is that we wanted to be these people with those people.
Yeah, and I think I spent more time trying to figure out what I wanted him to be and fighting for him to be a certain way than I even realized I was fighting. I didn't fight for myself to be a person.
Right.
I wanted them to be a person that I wanted them to be.
Right.
And I think that once I was forced out of a situation is when I started to really understand things. That's just
Right.
craziness. But got a little heavy on this episode 3, but I do want to encourage anyone listening to drop a comment, drop a like, let us know what you like about our show, what you don't like about the show, if you have any suggestions, and if
Maybe
you have
some movie
movie suggestions, and if you haven't seen Fear, it came out in 1996 for you youngins. Find it on any streaming service. I'm sure you can rent it on Prime. Check it out. And I need to know if you share the same thoughts that 2020, whatever that person's name was,
Brandon,
said.
was it?
Brandon. Yeah. Let us know what you think about Fear, because now we are curious, because I didn't know people were still reviewing it.
Yeah.
But again, this is The Horror Within Me. I'm joined with Letitz today. And as always, stay spooky.